Welcome friends. Tired of relying on over-the-counter medications for every sniffle and sleepless night? Well, join me in this video as we make 3 incredibly homemade remedies that will revolutionize your wellness routine. The cool thing about all 3 of these recipes is that you can make them at home from ingredients in your garden or in a normal grocery store. These will supercharge your immune system, ease your cold symptoms, and guarantee you a good night's sleep. Let's jump into the first recipe, a homemade sleepy time tea. First ingredient for the sleepy time tea is some lemon balm. I've been growing 1 plant of lemon balm in my green stock for probably 2 years now. This was a small little tiny plant that has, as you can see, grown out of control. I did put it in the green stock because I knew that lemon balm spreads aggressively and I didn't want to just put it in my garden where it would just take over. And so by putting it in my green stock, I have a little bit more control over it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to dehydrate the lemon balm. And I have a dehydrator, an electric dehydrator, but if you don't, you can dehydrate in your oven. Just put it at the lowest temperature, especially for herbs, and leave the door of the oven cracked open because the lowest temperature of an oven is actually still a little too hot for herbs. But if you're going to use an electric dehydrator, you're going to put it on a between 90 and 105 temperature for about 12 hours. That's what I usually do. Sometimes I do 24 hours just so I don't have to check it at 12 hours and I know that it's done. You really want the texture of the leaves to be very crispy and very dry, so that way it shreds up very easily. And I'm leaving the stems on the plants, but when I remove them from the dehydrator, I do pull the stems out. So here is the finished product. That's the lemon balm in the little plate. This right here is chamomile flowers. I did grow chamomile in my garden this year, and I've been collecting the flowers. Not very many, not as much as I would like. And then this here, I have some borage flowers, which is also really good for relaxation and sleep. I used the rest of the borage to create a tincture, but I did have some of these flowers left over that I had dried. And so we're gonna use those up in this tea. So I bought these little disposable tea bags on Amazon, and they seem to work pretty good so far. I was actually very surprised. They're more of a cotton texture rather than a lot of the ones that you get online are a paper texture. So I'm doing 2 teaspoons of the lemon balm, and then I'm doing 1 teaspoon of the chamomile. And then I'm just gonna throw in probably 2 or 3 of the borage flowers just because I don't have very many. And that's all there is to it. I'm gonna tie this little bag up and put it in a glass jar, and that is our sleepy time tea. You know, I never really was a herbal remedy fan until I got older. And it was actually my husband who got me into it. Before he really got me into herbal medicines, I used to get sick, I mean really sick, several times a year. So my immune system wasn't great. But since we switched over to herbal remedies, and we first started with things that you buy over the counter, we use these in 2 ways. One as a preventative, and then also as if we feel like a cold is coming on, we'll take a bunch of these to try to get our immune system activated and focused on clearing up whatever it is that we have. And I'm happy to report that ever since we switched over to using herbal medicines, I haven't had a cold in years. I can't even remember the last time I was sick. I haven't been sick. So what I've really taken away from using herbal medicines is that they are more of a way of keeping yourself healthy and try to fight off an illness quicker, faster, earlier in the process. The second recipe we're making will help you with a cold or flu, and that is the bee balm Oxymel. You want to start taking this right at the start of symptoms to either ward it off before it starts or shorten your recovery time and hopefully let you be functional while you're sick, because many of us can't just check out of our lives when we get sick. We have families, jobs, appointments, pets, gardens to take care of, and that means we need to be back on our feet as quickly as possible. I'm going to be clipping off these flowers, and these are bee balm, specifically a lemon mint bee balm. And no, this isn't like mint, like spearmint or peppermint lemon mint, true lemon mint, is actually a bee balm. It's in the bee balm family. I know, it's so confusing. Plants have like 2 or 3 names, and it is really confusing. But the easiest way to know that you have bee balm versus mint is the types of flowers. The bee balm flowers have like multiple flowers. They have a flower on top of a flower on top of a flower. So it's like a 3-tiered flower. I don't know if it's very obvious from the video here, but each one of those little pink petals has 3 layers to them. And so we're just going to cut all these off of my lemon mint plant. It will continue to grow and it will continue to produce more bee balm. It has actually grown a lot of it. This is my second big harvest of it. And then to dry your flowers, this is what I use for a lot of my flowers, is I just put them on a paper plate or a paper towel, whatever you have, spread them out so they have some air, and then I set them on my table for anywhere from 5 to 7 days. These guys was from my first harvest. You can see there's quite a bit of them here. That is bee balm that I have had dried for a couple of weeks now in preparation for this recipe. So I'm going to break up the flowers and the petals a little bit. Once again, this doesn't have any stems. You don't want to include stems normally. A lot of the times stems can cause bitterness. So I'm just getting rid of any stems that are on there, and I'm breaking up the flowers as best that I can. They are kind of a clump of flowers, so it doesn't have to be perfect, guys. And then the next step is I'm going to add 2/3 of a cup of the flowers, the dried flowers. And I'm using a 1/3 cup measure here, so I'm just going to do 2 of those. And then the next step is equal amounts of apple cider vinegar, so 2/3 of a cup of apple cider vinegar. I'm using this brand. It's pretty popular. It contains the mother, which is just the SCOBY. It's I guess that's a fermentation term if you're not familiar with it. It is a living bacteria, I think it is. I think it's bacteria, but it's a good bacteria. And so that is actually how vinegar is created, is with this good bacteria, and it's allowed to ferment and sit. And you can tell that it has it in there because it will be cloudy. The liquid is cloudy and sometimes it looks like there's stuff floating in it. That is that good bacteria. So then once we put our 2/3 cup into the mason jar with the bee balm flowers, now I'm going to put in some honey. Now this is a honey I actually found locally. There is a beekeeper that is nearby. We are just trying out their honey for the first time, and I got to tell you that of the little bit that we've tried so far, it is outstanding. Clean, pure, raw, really tasty honey. You know, we went out to the farm and we got to see the bees, and we saw how, you know, they were treated, and, you know, they were pretty much allowed to do whatever they want. They aren't transported throughout the country or anything like that. We felt pretty happy with purchasing our honey from this farm, and I'm really a big supporter of purchasing goods locally if it's possible. So we're going to do, once again, equal parts. This is a really easy recipe to remember. Equal parts bee balm, equal parts apple cider vinegar, and equal parts honey. Once you've got everything into the jar, you're going to give it a good shake, and then you're going to put it in a dark cabinet in your pantry, someplace cool, you know, not out in the garage or anything like that, but someplace nice and cool. And you're going to let it set for 4 weeks. Once your 4 weeks have passed, you're going to drain out the flowers from the mixture, and then you can either leave it on the counter and it will continue to ferment with that vinegar and that honey together, or you can put it in the refrigerator. I'm probably going to put it in the refrigerator because I don't want it to continue to ferment and have that taste enhancement. And it basically, what that does is, by putting it in a cold environment like the fridge, it is going to slow down that mother or that good bacteria from reproducing, and it will just last longer. If you start to feel like a little tickle in the back of the throat or a little sniffle starting, just take a tablespoon of this 2 or 3 times a day to help ward off that cold. The early part of my career was actually in pharmaceuticals, which is kind of funny thinking that I'm very much into herbal medicines now, when my career started in pharmaceuticals. I worked in a pharmacy, I worked IT, and that's when I transitioned my career into IT, but I've always been in healthcare. And so talking about herbal medicines, I am not in any way, shape, or form saying that modern medicine is not very useful. I still believe these are modern miracles, but I think we overuse them rather than focusing on our root problem. Pharmaceutical medication is a huge benefit for us. It was revolutionary to the healthcare field. It has helped people lead healthier, longer lives. I completely support it. I mean, take a look at something like type 1 diabetes and being able to take insulin. It's life-changing for people. And so I absolutely support modern medicine. But I think that with herbal medicines, we can take these natural things to help make our bodies react proactively rather than reactively. So a lot of times we seek out medications, whether they're over the counter or prescription medications, when we have a problem. But what if we focus on not having a problem by being proactive, or by jumping in front of the moment we start to feel like we have a little sniffle or a little scratch in the back of our throat, and we really focus on taking our natural ingredients first to see if we can ward that off. Another way is just to introduce these things into our wellness routine. So when you're brushing your hair or brushing your teeth, take your Oxymel or take your vitamin, or have a glass of tea in the morning rather than coffee, or mix your herbs with your coffee. All of these things are ways that you can introduce the herbal elements, the natural elements, for that proactive health benefit, that wellness benefit, rather than the reactive that we end up having to do when all else fails and we're like really, really sick. Don't forget to hit that notification bell below. You'll be the first to know whenever I release a new video packed with medicinal recipes, gardening tips, or harvest preservation. So go ahead, give that bell a little tap, and let's stay connected. The third recipe we're making today is fire cider. This is a drink that was created back in 1970s by herbalist Rosemary Gladstar at the California School of Herbal Studies for supporting a healthy immune system. The recipe she created was really a culmination of generations of herbal remedies handed down over and over and over, but she added her own unique twist on it. You can make this at home, or you can buy it already brewed from health food stores or herbalists. Today, I'm making my own for the first time, and I'm really excited, but I am tweaking the recipe a bit. You guys know I'm not a fan of spice. My husband isn't a fan of spice, and I'm leaving out a couple main ingredients, and I'm subbing a couple other ones. But otherwise, I am following Rosemary's recipe. I'm headed out into the garden to find a couple more of the ingredients for the fire cider. This right here is I'm picking off some red cherry peppers. Now the recipe does call for like a jalapeno or a habanero, something spicy, but we don't eat spicy food. So the idea behind this ingredient is to collect the capsaicin, I think it is. And I'm hoping that by using a pepper that is traditionally a hot pepper, a red cherry pepper is a hot pepper, but this particular variety has had the heat bred out of it, that maybe I'm still going to get the same benefits. So we're going to start by chopping our ginger. You can also grate it or mince it if you want. I am trying to keep this simple, so I'm just going to chop it up. I actually recently went out and bought this ginger and this next item, which is turmeric, from the store because I want to grow these in my garden. So I took half of them and I have them soaking so that way they can let off their sprouts, and then I can plant them in the garden. And the other half I'm going to use in this fire cider. The recipe does call for specific amounts. I think it was 7 ounces of this, but that would have taken all of the ginger and the turmeric, and I didn't want to do that because I want to grow some out in my garden. So besides the ginger and the turmeric, now I'm going to chop up my peppers. I had a green, I think this is a pimento pepper from the garden that I just had on the counter, and I was like, let me use that up. And then I'm going to pop in these little red cherry peppers in there as well. The next thing that I'm doing once the peppers are in is I'm going to put some of the herbs. I did get this rosemary from out in my garden, so you're just going to want 2 or 3 sprigs of rosemary. The recipe also called for thyme, which I don't have right now. If you have it in your garden, you'll want to put 3 sprigs of thyme as well. Another thing this recipe called for that I don't have and I'm not going to add or buy is horseradish. It does have medicinal qualities. It is very spicy. That is not something we're interested in, so we're leaving it out. It also calls for an onion. So I'm going to put this half of an onion. This is a homegrown onion. We grew these, we started them in September. And so a lot of them are starting to bulb now. I've pulled all the rest of them and they are outside in the patio curing. But this guy I brought in for this purpose. After the onion, I'm going to put in some cinnamon sticks. I have grated cinnamon or ground cinnamon, but the recipe really encourages whole sticks. So I think it has something to do with the cinnamon dissolving into the liquid, and that's why you want the sticks rather than the powder. So I just went out and bought a few. I'm going to take the remaining amount of these cinnamon sticks and I'm going to grind them up because I use cinnamon more often in the ground form than I do the whole form. So, you know, it's not a purchase that is going to go to waste. Then I have my garlic. These are garlic that we grew in the garden. They're little heads. I'm grabbing the ones that are little because this recipe doesn't actually call to peel the garlic. You can actually throw it in pretty much whole. You just want to break the skin so it can absorb into the liquid. So that's all I'm really doing is breaking the skin with the knife. But because they're smaller, they're much harder to use in regular cooking. So this is a great option for them. I also picked up a lemon and an orange from the grocery store. Unfortunately, my lemon tree is no more. It was on its way out anyway, and then we had a project that we were doing at the side of the house that no longer had room for the lemon tree. It was a sickly tree anyway, so I don't have fresh lemons anymore. I now have to buy them, which is heartbreaking, but that's okay, because we have lots of other fun fruit trees. I'm just cutting these into slices and I'm doing my best to try to fit everything in here. I'm going to cut this orange in slices as well. And a couple of these I'm going to probably cut in half just to be able to better fit them inside the jar. Don't be afraid to really push and smush these guys in. By the time they're done doing their fermentation in 4 weeks' time, they're not really going to be recognizable anyway. So they don't really have to be super pretty when they go in the jar. And just like with our bee balm recipe, we are going to be adding our apple cider vinegar. This is another brand that I use. It's a Publix brand and it also has the mother in it. It's good quality. I think it's their Greenwise apple cider vinegar. And so we're just going to fill the entire thing up with the apple cider vinegar. And I got to tell you, it is one of the prettiest herbal remedies I think I've ever made. If it's just for looks alone, it's so pretty. I'm going to take my canning debubbler, I think that's what it's called, and I'm going to push around the fruit and the vegetables in there to make sure that, you know, I'm getting as much of the vinegar in there as possible. You can use a knife or a chopstick with this as well. And we're just going to top it off with a little bit more vinegar now that those air bubbles have gone away. I also have these little pickle pebbles. They are a fermentation product. I don't think this is absolutely necessary, but I just felt like because I really overfilled this, you may want to consider using a half-gallon jar versus my quart that I used here. But because I overfilled it, I am going to use this little pickle pepper, which is just a weight. This fire cider is really an immune booster. I think in a lot of ways we take our immune system for granted because it just works. We don't really have to think about it. We don't have to focus on it. And until something goes wrong, we don't even, consider that we need to be making it a priority in our lives. So instead of waiting till we're sick, let's focus on being proactive and doing all the things that we should do to help our immune system, like get good sleep, get your solid 8 hours, uninterrupted, eat healthy whole foods, exercise out in the garden every day. These are all ways that we do to make sure that we're taking care of our health. We also should be taking our supplements, whether that is these herbal remedies, growing your own herbs for seasoning your food, or something as simple as taking a multivitamin every day. Just make it a small part of your normal morning or evening routine. Everything I used in the video today, I'll add links to in the description below. If you want to watch a couple more of my videos, I'm going to pop them up right now. You can check those out between now and my next upload. Happy gardening, guys!